Welcome back to Watch the Bookerman and to episode number 49 of Paul Heyman's TNA 2010, and notably this is the post Bound for Glory episode, all the fallout from 10-10-10, the biggest and quite possibly best show in TNA history if you base it off that rating there, a 92, thanks largely in part to that main event. And with the pay-per-view taking place at the Ocean Center in Daytona Beach, we are back in the Impact Zone for this episode, and we begin the show outside of the Impact Zone, where we see a black camper van has pulled up to the building. Jumping out from the back, Jimmy Jacobs gets out, walks around and slides open the side door. Alyssa Flash, Mischief and Sarah Del Rey get out of the front of the vehicle, while the Bound for Glory debutantes Chris Hero, Claudio Castagnoli and Tyler Black jump out of the open door. So for those who didn't see the pay-per-view, this would be the first we would see of the new and improved New Age. All 7 members of the group are dressed in black as they walk to the entrance of the building. Jimmy Jacobs is the last member of the group to enter the Impact Zone, and he looks down the lens of the camera while passing it, reminding viewers that the New Age has arrived. So arguably the biggest story coming out of Bound for Glory, so I just thought we'd open the show with their arrival at the building and hopefully putting it over as a big deal. It's not a great segment rating, but I think that's good. There's going to be a teething process with this new group. I'm confident that, for instance, tonight's show is going to get a really good rating, and that by trying to push these guys who aren't necessarily as over as the other big names, we're still going to be able to put on good shows, and it's not going to hurt our ratings or hinder our growth or anything like that. Following a brand new opening credit sequence, Mauro Ranallo and Taz welcome viewers to the Impact after Bound for Glory, with Mauro putting over the pay-per-view as the night that everything changed. Taz recommends that everybody goes out of their way to watch Angle v Styles 3, but says that the biggest talking point has to be the arrival of the New Age when they came out and took down Jeff Hardy and Sting. They talk over a series of stills which recaps the night that the group had. We begin with Sarah Del Rey joining Alyssa Flash and Mischief as they helped her to defeat Awesome Kong for the Knockouts Championship before the shocking moment that I previously mentioned. The two men, Jeff Hardy and Sting, were embracing in a feel-good moment when Jimmy Jacobs actioned Project 10-10-10. After a lights out, Chris Hero, Claudio Castagnoli and Tyler Black made their debuts. Obviously most people know this, but we are recapping it. We get 70,000 viewers for the pay-per-views and the TV gets more than 10 times that. Mauro Ranallo says that we'll be hearing from the New Age's leader Jimmy Jacobs up next as he formally introduces the group to the Impact Zone. Much better from them, but we go straight into that Jimmy Jacobs promo. No, again, not that good of a rating, but they make their way down to the ramp as a singular huddle, the New Age entering these 6 sides together for the very first time. Standing between Alyssa Flash, Mischief and Sarah Del Rey to one side, and Chris Hero, Claudio Castagnoli and Tyler Black to the other, Jacobs smugly tells the audience, "Don't say I didn't warn you." He adds that he waited 10 long months to bring all of this together, but at Bound for Glory, everything changed. Jacob says that he was always upfront about his plans. They brought Mick Foley on board and took what they needed from him before casting him aside. Of course, with the black camper van, this does draw the callback to Mick Foley being taken out by that vehicle. So the idea here is, while we're not going to go into it because there's no chance of anything coming of it involving Mick Foley and any sort of comeuppance for him, the idea is that they were the ones who took Mick Foley out, hopefully putting him over as a even more despicable group. Jimmy Jacobs says that it's funny because his vision is very similar to that of Paul Heyman that everybody seemed to get on board with, but the difference is he's a little bit more extreme when it comes to his methods in getting what he wants. Paul Heyman is trying to cultivate this culture, while Jimmy Jacobs is simply taking what he wants. The New Age has arrived, but the project has only just begun. They are here to break the mold and shape the future, to make everybody in this building and watching at home forget what they thought they knew about professional wrestling. And that begins tonight as Tyler Black makes his debut in the main event. His opponent is the stupidest man in wrestling, the guy who quit this group only 7 nights ago, Roderick Strong. So it's not necessarily massive star power in our main event, but we're going to try and, through this promo and throughout the rest of the night, put over the fact that you're going to see Tyler Black in a TNA ring for the first time. Those who know him will, of course, want to see that. Those who don't, we're trying to get them on board with the idea that this guy is going to bring something that you haven't seen before. We then go into the opening match, and it's another New Age presence, with Sara Del Rey squashing Boogie Nova in 2 minutes and 6 seconds, making her tap out to the cross armbreaker. Decent performance from Del Rey. Boogie Nova's just there as a jobber, so it doesn't really matter. Straightforward opening contest, but Awesome Kong is out as soon as Sara Del Rey has her arm raised, looking to confront the 3 women who stole the Knockouts Championship at Bound for Glory. All 3 of them were involved, and Kong is pretty quickly swarmed by all of them. The 3 women take Kong down, with Hamada running out to help her former partner and friend. Hamada herself is unsurprisingly quickly taken down. The commentator is putting over just how much of a force the New Age look already. Certainly the female side looks set to dominate their locker room. Mickie James and Tara then come out from the back, the new Knockouts Tag Team Champions, but they box a little bit more clever and remain at the top of the ramp. Having lost to them, the dynamics kind of switched here because Alyssa Flash and Mischief want their hands on the new champs. Mickie James cuts a fairly light-hearted promo, playing to the crowd and putting over her debut victory with Tara by her side, and then becoming the Knockouts Tag Team Champions. With a bit more history with the trio than her partner, Tara's a lot more serious, challenging them to a match next week. She knows that Kong and Hamada have just as much disdain for them as her, and given Mickey's new around here, Tara wants to team with Awesome Kong and Hamada to send a message that this Knockouts locker room isn't going to be taken over by the New Age. Mickie James is also happy with this, and she jokes that after taking the tag team titles in her first match, she might be coming for Sara Del Rey's title next. So Del Rey, not happy with this. She's getting under the skin of all 3 members of the New Age. We don't want sort of Mickie James to come in and then be seen as playing second fiddle to the New Age, but it does feel like we're getting some really strong characters in the Knockouts division now, and while we lose heat to these storylines, I think in the long term we are going to easily build them back up. Jeremy Borash then interviews Kurt Angle, asking for the World Heavyweight Champion's reaction to his incredible match against AJ Styles at Bound for Glory. Kurt Angle first looks to put over the performance of AJ Styles, but the ego's still there. He says that he proved without a shadow of a doubt that he is the best wrestler on the planet. Kurt Angle says that while he's still feeling the effects of the Iron Man match on his body, he has to put the victory out of his mind. Part of being a world champion is always looking to the next challenger and always looking ahead, and he's going to address that in the ring later tonight. JB asks if a rematch with AJ Styles could be on the cards. After all the buzz from that match, people want to see it again, but Kurt reiterates that he believes it's time to look for a new challenger. As Kurt goes to end the interview, Chris Hero, Claudio Castagnoli and Tyler Black walk directly in front of the camera, glancing at the champion as they go by. Kurt Angle is obviously annoyed by this disrespect, but there is no further incident and the segment ends. This isn't necessarily trying to set anything up, it's just the idea of putting across that the New Age have no respect for the established order, and they're just walking straight past an interview with the World Heavyweight Champion. Kurt Angle's next challenger begins with that, and we'll see what comes of that when he speaks in the ring later tonight. Cutting to a locker room elsewhere, Kazarian and Daniels are approached by Matt Morgan and Madison Rayne. Chris Daniels asks where Morgan has been all night, with Matt and Madison exchanging a glance but saying no words. Daniels says none of that matters anyway, because they're here in time for him to explain the plan for tonight. Matt Morgan cuts Christopher Daniels off and tells him that he needs to say something first. Daniels really wants to talk about Kaz and Daniels' match with LAX tonight, but Matt Morgan tells him this isn't working. Daniels doesn't understand what he means, but gets the picture when Matt Morgan leaves the room. Daniels then turns to Madison Rayne and starts relaying his plan to her, but Rayne also stops him in his tracks, pointing to the door and saying, "I'm going with Matt." Daniels can't believe it and turns to Kazarian, who's a little bit less bothered by it. He kind of shrugs it off, but Daniels kicks a locker room door, frustrated that he's going to have to go back to the drawing board. This is a response to the fact that the booking of Bad Influence as a stable hasn't been particularly good. I felt like they've served a purpose, they did a good job at Slammiversary, but by Bound for Glory, losing to LAX, who I do want to establish as a strong group in the company, Bad Influence has kind of fallen by the wayside, and Morgan is out of there. Madison Rain's brief run means she's out of there. Daniels and Kazarian will now take on Bad Influence as their tag team name going forward. A relatively amicable split really, but then Sonjay Dutt makes his return to Impact in the second match of the night and defeats Amazing Red. We do put across that Red is still feeling the effects of that street fight from Sunday, but Dutt does pick up the victory with a standing Shiranui. A good performance from Sonjay Dutt and a good performance from Amazing Red really, but it does say that we needed a crowd that was buzzing for action for the High Spots match. It says we had good heat, so I didn't think that'd be a problem, but fair enough. And the match did have a tendency to drift a little because of a lack of psychology. So that is probably where the segments earlier will be hurting us. Usually we might have AJ Styles come out and cut an 80 rated promo. With Jimmy Jacobs it's more like 50s, but a 59 is still a decent rating, and it's a good way I think to put over Sonjay Dutt on his return. He continues celebrating his successful return to singles competition when Larry Sweeney makes his way down to the ring. He's joined by Austin Creed and the X Division champion Kazuchika Okada. Larry approaches Sonjay, shoves the referee out the way and offers him his business card. Sweeney says that he has officially launched his sweet and sour agency and he is open for new signings. He thinks that Sonjay Dutt is the perfect fit. He learned on Sunday firsthand just how hard that man hits. Sonjay takes the card, but immediately rips it into tiny pieces and throws it at Larry. Sweeney's expression goes from smug to shocked as Dutt says that he knows exactly what Larry is up to. He wants him on board because he's a threat to the X Division Championship. Dutt says that the title eluded him for his entire first run with TNA, but the reason he is back here is to take that championship from Kazuchika Okada. We then head to the back and AJ Styles is seen entering the office of Paul Heyman. With it only being a 2-minute segment, it's not that good of a rating, which is a bit disappointing, but both guys improvise well, so I couldn't have really asked for anything better. Styles says that they need to talk and cuts Paul off before he can even get into praising his performance at Bound for Glory. AJ asks Paul what he intends to do about the New Age. Paul pauses, then tells AJ pretty nonchalantly, nothing. He may not have liked how they introduced themselves, but this is what he's been asking for. They're young, they're hungry, and they're certainly aggressive. AJ Styles is a little bit pissed off by Paul's reaction, and even more so when Paul adds, and they're coming for your spot, AJ. It's clear that Heyman is trying to get more out of AJ Styles. This is one of his tactics, that he makes people feel backed into a corner and hopes that they come out swinging. He says that a rising tide lifts all ships, and he knows that these guys are really, really good. Paul trying to put over the New Age as well there, and it does advance that storyline. The idea here being that Paul Heyman, who you might expect is not happy by this invading force, actually they're just coming here to fight, they're coming here to prove themselves, and for the time being at least, they pose no threat to Paul Heyman's power, so why wouldn't he be happy for 3 of the best wrestlers in the world to come to TNA? We then get an interview with the new Knockouts Tag Team Champions, with Christy Hemme asking about their victory on Sunday and their challenge from earlier in the night. The Knockouts Tag Team Champions say that the match has been confirmed and the 3 female members of the New Age will face Tara, Awesome Kong and Hamada next Thursday on Impact. As Mickey looks to reveal her plans going forward, the interview is interrupted by Angelina Love and Velvet Sky. The Beautiful People promote a huge announcement on the Beautiful People show this Saturday on Explosion and tell the champions that now the titles are away from those dirty skanks in the New Age, they'll soon be around the waist of the tag team that they were designed to be around the waists of. This was the gimmick that they kind of had at the time when the Knockouts Tag Team Championships were brought in. I think it was more Velvet and Madison because Angelina Love was out of contract, but they basically said in their promos, the title's been brought in so that we can have them, Mickey and Tara don't take this seriously, shaking their heads, laughing it off as they leave the interview set. It's a decent segment, not great, and I've actually sabotaged it myself really, because the beautiful people were improvising. I'm assuming Tara was as well, while Mickey was on a script. I've tried to put most things scripted tonight because I wanted to play it a little bit safe. It was sort of a risk-averse move that I decided to take with the success that Bound for Glory had been. I just want to get a solid rating here and to keep the momentum going. The third match of the night is a competitive match. The Motor City Machine Guns coming out of that Full Metal Mayhem match and defeating Generation Me with a Made in Detroit. It's a match we've seen a few times before. A 54 for me always feels like an underrating of it. Wrestling's Greatest Tag Team joined commentary before the match, and they're actually saying during the match how impressed they are that Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin are back in the ring just 4 nights after Full Metal Mayhem. They themselves say that they'd struggle to have a match, so they're even more impressed to see Motor City Machine Guns beat such a good team. Following a competitive match, Alex Shelley and Chris Sabin offer a handshake to Generation Me, but Nick and Matt blow them off, rolling out the ring. A lack of respect, you could say, from Generation Me, having put over MCMG during the match. WGTT, Wrestling's Greatest Tag Team, are surprised by the lack of respect, but tell Mauro and Taz that they're going to go and talk to the champions. Charlie Haas and Shelton Benjamin walk to the top of the stage with microphones and make their challenge once again. The dream match that was set for No Surrender, but cancelled due to injury. They want to make it happen. Bound for Glory's been and gone. Turning Point's coming up, and the world wants to see that match. Before the Motor City Machine Guns can respond, however, Beer Money come out from the back, and they're also nursing injuries from Bound for Glory. The two teams at the top of the ramp get into a bit of a shoving match. They're all a little bit tender from the pay-per-view, so it's nothing overly physical. Usually you'd expect these four to end up brawling. That's not the case. WGTT say that they get it. If they want Motor City Machine Guns, they're going to have to go through Beer Money. Shelton says that that won't be a problem as WGTT head to the back, and we're setting up there that Beer Money and WGTT both want the next shot at the Motor City Machine Guns. In a way, they're both owed a title shot because James Storm and Rude never had their 2-on-2 rematch. Shelton Benjamin and Charlie Haas won that 4-way and never got their match. Returning to the second hour of Impact, Kurt Angle comes down to the ring and again puts over his Iron Man match from Bound for Glory. He defeated AJ Styles, as we all know, and people are already looking back and calling it one of the best matches in TNA history, one of the best matches in Kurt and AJ's careers, but he's here to look forward. In this business, you can never stop focusing on what lies ahead, and he would be no champion if he rested now. He saw what the New Age did to Jeff Hardy and Sting on Sunday, but he admits that seeing that fresh talent, those new faces, it excites him. He says that he's beaten a bunch of talented guys since winning this title, but wants to know who will step up next. From the back, James Mitchell makes his way out, carrying Abyss's Global Championship over his shoulder. Once in the ring, Mitchell drops the title in front of Kurt Angle's feet, and he says that they took Maria to get to Jay Lethal, and they took out Jay Lethal to get to that title that's on the ground. Mitchell now presents Kurt with the TNA Global Championship and challenges him to face Abyss at Turning Point with the World Heavyweight Championship on the line. Kurt Angle looks down to the ground and then to James Mitchell. Mitchell tells Kurt that Abyss will be here next week, and he wants Kurt Angle to give him an answer and make sure that it's the right one. So James Mitchell leaving the Global Championship in the ring with Kurt Angle might be seen as a burial of the title, but in truth, I'm not that big of a fan of the belt. The Global Championship, previously the Legends Championship, I've been looking at the lineage, and just in general, having a world title and then a global title, it just feels like overlap. We do put over that when Bryan Danielson makes his debut, he crosses paths with the World Heavyweight Champion Kurt Angle. Just a brief little moment as Bryan Danielson puts in a good performance in a very, very convincing victory, making Jesse Neal tap out to the LaBelle lock, the same move that finished off Desmond Wolfe at Bound for Glory, once again putting over the violent, brutal in-ring style of Bryan Danielson, and he once again remains in the zone following his victory, but his spotlight is taken away as Desmond Wolfe appears on the ramp. Bryan's debut this time last month took the spotlight off a Wolfe victory, so turnabout is fair play, but we see that Desmond Wolfe has his arm in a sling. He explains that he sustained this injury during the match with Bryan on Sunday, and that is why he had no choice to tap out. It wasn't Bryan's skill that cost him, but pure bad luck. So Wolfe really on sort of a delusional justification for his defeat here. pretty much the point of a match is to hurt your opponent so much that they can't continue. That happened, and Wolfe is somehow claiming that that's an act of God and isn't down to Bryan being better than him. Danielson isn't buying this and tells Wolfe to bring it on. If he wants to make excuses, he'll fight him anytime. Wolfe says he'd love to, but for obvious reasons, pointing to his arm, that isn't possible yet. However, Desmond Wolfe is out here to tell fans that they can wipe Bound for Glory from their collective memories, that TNA can wipe it from the records, because when he is back to 100%, he is going to prove that Bryan Danielson is no match for Desmond Wolfe. So the commentator is putting over as well that Wolfe's a little bit delusional. Bryan just beat him. There's no excuse to be made. We then get the usual post-pay-per-view breakdown from Mike Tenay, but he's not joined by Ada Okal. Instead, Ken Shamrock takes the seat next to him, the referee for the controversial Bobby Lashley v Samoa Joe rematch from Bound for Glory. Mike explains that Bobby Lashley and Samoa Joe have been asked to stay away from the Impact Zone tonight to allow their emotions to settle. They're going to look to sort that out next week. Tenay looks for Shamrock's perspective on the ending of the match. Ken says that he admits he got a little bit heated. He may have overstepped the line, but he defends his actions. The referee's decision is final, and Bobby Lashley needs to respect that, even in the heat of combat, even on such an important night. Shamrock admits that when he signed up to referee the match, the last thing he wanted was a questionable ending, but says that from his vantage point, Bobby Lashley had no chance of escaping that Coquina clutch. He had to call for the bell. He adds that he hopes to see Joe and Lashley face off one more time, but plays down any chance of him returning to a TNA ring to settle those issues with Bobby Lashley. I've not yet tried, but Ken Shamrock is retired in game, so it's unlikely that I'll be able to do anything with him. He's only on a 1-month contract, but I thought that on the post-Bound for Glory episode, while we still had him here, it'd be a good use of him, albeit losing heat to the storyline. But in terms of putting across what happened, without doing a recap package, we had Ken Shamrock, the man at the centre of the controversy, explaining what went down. We then get the 5th match of the night, and for those not necessarily happy with the booking of Bad Influence, it's another bad defeat. We put this over as a first time ever, and the idea largely that we're putting across is that Daniels and Kazarian had no time to prepare. They had their plan A, and once that was ruined by Matt Morgan and Madison Rayne hanging them out to dry, there wasn't really much they could do. LAX were just focused on the win, and with a 51-50 homicide pins Christopher Daniels. It's a good second last match of the night. Actually, it's potentially going to be the best match of the night, to be honest. It does end the LAX Bad Influence storyline, with Bad Influence as a stable coming to an end. LAX have won that feud very, very decisively, it has to be said, and we are continuing to try and build Homicide and Hernandez as credible threats in the tag team division. Daniels and Kazarian's time will come, I promise that. I've got a pretty good plan with them now that I've just I had it in mind as a long-term idea, but I'm bringing it forward now. Following their victory, Homicide and Hernandez celebrate in the ring, a huge victory in this first time ever meeting. Mauro and Taz put over the impressive record of LAX since their reunion and suggest that the two men are putting themselves in with a serious shout of number one contendership as we return for the final 30 minutes of the show. Back in the ring, we see Jeremy Borash Studd, and he invites the controversial Mr. Anderson to the 6-sided ring. Mr. Anderson comes out and gloats about what he did to Jeff Jarrett at Bound for Glory, saying that he doesn't give a damn that he's the founder of this company because he's been treated like crap since the day he got here. He tells JB that he was this close, holding his thumb and forefinger about an inch apart, to quitting the company on Sunday, but then he had a eureka moment. With one foot out the door, he realised he's got nothing to lose. He has a guaranteed contract here for the next 14 months, and he's going to leave Paul Heyman with no choice but to do something about it. Mr. Anderson tells JB to hold out his hand, and being pretty intimidated, he does. Anderson takes a piece of chewing gum out of his mouth and puts it into his hand, closing JB's hand and making it all sticky and horrible. Just a gross action, but showing that he's just being an absolute prick now, or an asshole. Anderson then slaps JB about a bit, nothing too violent, but he's just being a general bully. He grabs a microphone, looks down the camera and says, "I'm an asshole, and you," referencing Paul Heyman, "are going to have to do something about it." After the segment on Bound for Glory doing really well, I'm really optimistic about Mr. Anderson for the first time in quite a few months. He's always been clearly a fan of Austin from his promo style, and I think that just having him going around the company, albeit as a heel, just beating up whoever he finds and having a bit more of an edge is going to be very, very good for his character going forward. Prior to the main event, AJ Styles speaks with Christy Hem in the back. It's a little bit better than his segment from earlier in the night, and he just sends a message to the New Age. He warns that he's got his eye on them, and he's not going to let them get away with doing whatever they want, wherever they want, to whoever they want. He's seen stuff like this in TNA before. He's been here for 8 years. There's nothing that can surprise him, and he's damned if he's going to let some outsiders try and take over this company once again. AJ Styles has a close eye on the main event, but trusts that Roderick Strong has enough in the tank to cut them down before they can get going. He wants Roderick to nip them in the bud tonight, and we go into that main event. 71, I'm happy with that overall, I will say. I think I said it as a steal the show match, and I think they've bettered the second last match of the night, and while it's not that great in the individual performances, the fact that the two of them together can pull out a 71 is a good sign. This was, I'm sure they did this as a main event in Ring of Honor, not too far out from this timeline. Tyler Black defeats Roderick Strong in 14 minutes and 13 with a God's last gift. The reason that I chose Chris Hero, Claudio Castagnoli and Tyler Black is because I think that they're three really, really unique wrestlers. When I first saw Claudio Castagnoli, I think it was against El Generico, and Chris Hero, I can't remember, but it was on PWG shows from around this time. And when I watched them, I felt like somebody who'd only really watched WWE and TNA. It was just something completely different, particularly the elbows that Chris Hero threw, Castagnoli's uppercuts, and just the way they worked matches. It wasn't until a bit later, I think it was more in WWE, that I saw Tyler Black, and the way he wrestled, to me, was completely unique, and that's the idea of the New Age. The idea is that they are bringing these new wrestling styles to a major promotion, and I genuinely don't think these three wrestlers who were available at this time, who I would have preferred to have in this group, hopefully that's the impression that they make, or that Tyler Black makes on his in-ring debut. Likewise, the Kings of Wrestling will debut next week, and that's the impression that we want to put across with them. I think more so even than Tyler Black, Castagnoli and Chris Hero were really, really unique in what they did. Speaking of those guys, they joined Tyler Black in the ring, and despite their lack of involvement, their presence at ringside was felt throughout the match, but it was a clean win for Tyler Black. We have to emphasize that. Jimmy Jacobs joins the male members of the New Age in the ring, looking to stand tall at the end of their first night in the Impact Zone. It's been a huge triumph. They've been all over the show. Hopefully nobody thinks they've been overexposed or anything like that. The game didn't give me any notes about them being on too many segments, so hopefully it was just the right amount. However, before we sign off on the show, Jeff Hardy comes out from the back, vastly outnumbered. He is encouraged to the ring by Jimmy Jacobs, but he's not that stupid. He remains at the top of the ramp, looking over his shoulder. Jeff Hardy is joined by Sting, opponents at Bound for Glory, victims of the New Age, but tonight they stand shoulder to shoulder. Jeff Hardy has a baseball bat in his hand, and with the odds still against them, they don't come down to the ring, instead just staring down the New Age, making it clear that they are here to fight back against them. Mauro and Taz sign off on an eventful night of TNA action. They're sure that everybody will be back again next week as the fallout to the biggest night in TNA history continues in 7 nights' time. The commentators also get word that next week Tyler Black will return to singles competition against AJ Styles, a first time ever meeting inside the TNA ring. A 76, it's not up there with one of the best, I don't think, but it's a really strong rating considering we're trying to put over these new stars and these fresh faces. I did a bullet point list basically of what had happened on Bound for Glory and what we needed to check off, and by the time that I'd booked the show, everything had a tick next to it, and it wasn't that I had to force some segments in the build up to Bound for Glory. When I looked and I've got 10 matches, I need something for this, I need something for this, I need something for this, whereas when I booked this show, it just came together naturally, and that's something that I think a show is better when you're booking just here's the next step and it all sort of falls into place. AJ Styles praising Velvet Sky, obviously a big fan of her. Like I did after Slammiversary, I've tried out a new skin, so if anybody wants to try this out, I think it's a really, really good skin. It's basically a dark version of the default skin, I think. I've not seen the default skin for a while, so yeah, there'll be a link to that in the description is what I'm trying to say. Thank you for watching, really, really appreciate it as always, and the next episode is a pretty big milestone as we hit 50 episodes of Paul Heyman's young, hungry and aggressive alternative.